bảo con là cứ tới hỏi thầy như vậy á.
Dạ.
Cho nên là con cũng thầy có biết câu trả lời không ạ?
Dạ, chuyện là rơi từ vô minh. Dạ.
Từ vô minh.
Ồ, tham. Dạ.
A fallen leaf descends from ignorance, like a journey from forgetfulness to awakening. In the stillness of meditation, each falling leaf carries an invisible message: impermanence, transformation, and letting go. Watching a leaf fall, we suddenly realize that all things are constantly changing, just as our minds cannot cling to anything forever. Like a gentle breeze passing through the trees, life also flows with ceaseless transformations. Standing before a leaf that has fallen from its branch, the practitioner no longer sees it as a loss, but as a return part of the natural cycle of birth and death in serenity. Therefore, with each breath, we learn to accept, to let go, so that our hearts may become as light as a leaf drifting between heaven and earth. In the endless flow of time, what we perceive as loss is, in fact, merely transformation. The leaf does not disappear. It only changes form, returning to Mother Earth, only to be reborn in a different form one day. Awakening is the same. It does not arise from grand experiences, but from simple moments, such as when we watch a leaf fall. Ignorance is the darkness that veils the mind, preventing people from seeing the true nature of life. Because of ignorance, beings wander through samsara, creating karmic afflictions, drowning in greed, anger, and delusion without understanding why they suffer. But just as the night cannot remain when the sun rises, ignorance cannot persist when wisdom illuminates. Have you ever wondered why people endlessly chase after fame, power, and love, yet never find true peace? Why do we keep repeating the same mistakes, lifetime after lifetime, unable to break free? The answer lies in something invisible, yet governs our entire existence in ignorance. Ignorance is not merely a lack of knowledge. It is a veil that obscures the truth. When we do not see the true nature of life, we easily mistake suffering for happiness, impermanence for permanence, illusion for reality. And due to ignorance, we are drawn into the whirlpool of craving, hatred, and delusion, endlessly trapped in the cycle of birth and death. However, there is a path that allows us to break free from this darkness, to illuminate our minds and discover true happiness, the path of wisdom and awakening. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught that not knowing suffering, not knowing the cause of suffering, not knowing the cessation of suffering, and not knowing the path to the cessation of suffering, this is ignorance. When people do not understand that suffering is an inherent part of life, they try to escape reality, only to fall into other forms of suffering. When they do not realize that craving is the root cause of suffering, they continue to pursue their desires, unaware that it is this very pursuit that exhausts them. Understanding ignorance allows us to see that all suffering in life is not dictated by fate, but is the consequence of delusions in the mind. Ignorance is not something distant. It exists in every thought, word, and action. A person driven by greed will go to great lengths to accumulate wealth, yet when they obtain it, they still feel unsatisfied. A person consumed by anger nurtures resentment, but the more they hate, the more they suffer. A person blinded by delusion chases after fleeting dreams, only to realize in the end that they have wasted their entire life. One may believe that wealth guarantees happiness, yet how many wealthy individuals still fail to find peace? one may think that following their desires will bring joy. But when everything collapses, they come to see that their pursuits were nothing more than a passing illusion. We often recognize the mistakes of others, but fail to see that we ourselves are also living in ignorance. Understanding ignorance is not meant to instill fear or despair, but to help us remove the veils that obscure our minds, so we may see the true nature of life and discover the path to peace. Ignorance is a state of not seeing reality clearly, being clouded by illusions. In Buddhism, ignorance is not merely a lack of understanding, but a thick veil that distorts our perception of the world, leading us to chase after illusions and suffer as a result. In Pali, ignorance is called avijja, meaning the absence of wisdom and right understanding. It is the fundamental cause of suffering, the first link in the chain of dependent origination, keeping beings bound to the cycle of birth and death. One way to reduce ignorance is to observe our thoughts. When a negative thought arises, instead of being carried away by it, simply pause, recognize it, and refrain from following it. When a person can observe their thoughts without being controlled by them, they have begun to live with awareness. A single word can bring joy, but it can also cause deep wounds. Without mindfulness, people easily utter words that lead to suffering and distress. However, if they pause for a moment before speaking, they can avoid many mistakes. Every day, simply practicing speaking with kindness, avoiding harsh words, falsehoods, and divisive speech can gradually transform ignorance. Living with mindfulness is neither distant nor difficult. It does not require renouncing everything to retreat into the forest, but rather learning to observe oneself, to pause before acting, to recognize the thoughts and emotions unfolding within. When a person can see themselves clearly, they will no longer be led by ignorance, nor be bound by negative habits. Every moment of mindfulness, every right thought, and every virtuous action is a step toward overcoming ignorance. In the end, what matters is not how much knowledge one possesses, but how much of it is applied to life. If a person can change their perspective, live with clarity, and practice what is right, they will no longer be clouded by ignorance or caught in unnecessary suffering. Looking back on the journey traveled, we can see that ignorance is not something insurmountable. Everyone has the capacity to discover wisdom within themselves, if only they are willing to open their hearts, let go of old burdens, and walk the path of light. And when the light of wisdom is kindled, not only does one person transcend ignorance, but the world around them also becomes clearer and brighter.